Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. He's here with me still. Good job, BB. We have dropped the load we had at the Sam's Club distribution center in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Didn't take as long as I thought it would, but the place is still kind of a madhouse. There's not a lot of room to back into a dock or whatever, so it's a little bit of a hassle. Also, there's some people that park stupidly, like waiting to get into dock, which makes it harder on the people that are trying to back in. So we actually are dispatched on a load. It doesn't pick up till tomorrow at, and by the way, today's Sunday. Happy Sunday to everybody. The load doesn't pick up till tomorrow in Forest, Mississippi at Tyson, and that load's going up to Massachusetts, the Bay State. So we're here near Lake, Mississippi. Of course, Mississippi is, a lot of people think Hawaii is the last state in the union, but I think it's Mississippi. They're ranked in like 50th in a whole bunch of categories that would matter to most people. Capital is Jackson. Largest city is Jackson, I believe. I actually have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, so we're in Mississippi. So Lake is so tiny that it really doesn't have much noteworthy history. It's only ever had a few hundred people. We're in Newton County. And Newton County, this is kind of cool, is named for Sir Isaac Newton, the physicist, the guy that, a scientist, turns out, right? And he's science. And, the theory of gravity, is that what it's called? Well, principle of gravity. So anyway, named after Newton. I don't know, I haven't seen anybody around here sitting under apple trees and getting hit on the head, but that's what the county's named for. The county's got some interesting history, as was not unlike many counties in the South. William Tecumseh Sherman came through here and burned a bunch of crap down, including he basically burned the town that's the county seat, and he stayed nearby in a town called Union, Mississippi. But I was also interested in some of their like presidential election results over the years. So this county was, going back to 1912. That's the results I saw going back to 1912. It was solid. They always voted. The Democratic candidate for president always won. Up until 1972. So 72 was the first election where the Republican won, and that Republican was Richard Nixon. And then every year since then, the Republicans have won. But there were 3 years that a third-party candidate, 3 different presidential elections, that a third-party candidate in this county won the county. Now, the county's, just like Lake, the county's not very big. There's like 20,000 people here. And actually, the county's, their zenith of population, right, the highest population they ever had was around 1940, and it's gone down since then. And that's probably consistent with the vast majority of rural counties across America, population decrease. And I saw a thing about the 2020 census where there was some analysis of it, and one comment that the analyst made was that they basically, when a county starts to decrease in population, it never comes back. It just never comes back. I don't know. I mean, that's just been the trend. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but it has been the trend. So even if a new business comes in, it doesn't get it back to where it was. I mean, I guess, if there were, a new military base opened up or something like that, or Amazon put 3 distribution centers, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so those three elections I was talking about. In 1948, there was a candidate under the Dixiecrat Party, and that was Strom Thurmond. Now, you may recall Strom Thurmond was a rabid segregationist who had a black mistress, but apparently he didn't think you needed to be segregated that much because he had a black mistress and he fathered children with her. But he ended up being in the Senate until he was like damn near 100. He was, by that time, a Republican. He was a senator from South Carolina. But he ran on the Dixiecrat Party in 1948 and carried Newton County. In 1960, and by the way, in 48, the only 2 people that appeared on the ballot were Thurmond and Harry S. Truman. Now, you may recall from the 48 election the famous picture of Truman holding up the newspaper where it says Dewey defeats Truman, right? Well, Dewey referred to Thomas Dewey, who was, I think, either was or had been the governor of New York. But Dewey apparently wasn't even on the ballot here as a Republican in 1948 for whatever reason. And then in 1960, Harry F. Byrd, another segregationist, ran on the Southern Democrat Party. His vice presidential running mate in the 1960 election was Strom Thurmond. In that election, they won the county. The second place in the county was John F. Kennedy, and Richard Nixon finished 3rd. And we'll come back to that, right? And then in 68, right, the ticket was, the 3 candidates were Richard Nixon was the Republican nominee, Hubert H. Humphrey, former vice president, former senator from Minnesota, was the Democratic nominee, and then George Wallace, who was governor of Alabama and also a segregationist, he ran on the American Independent ticket, but he was a Democrat. Okay, but he ran on the American Independent ticket. Wallace carries the county in 68. Humphrey finishes 2nd, the Democrat, and Nixon finishes 3rd again. So Nixon was like 0 for 2 in this county with 2 third-place finishes. But here's where it turns around for Tricky Dick, right? In the 72 election, right, there's no third-party candidate. Nixon wins the county. The Democratic nominee was Senator George McGovern, a Democrat of South Dakota. Nixon wins the county, and that 72 election starts an unabated streak of Republicans carrying the county in presidential elections. Now, the interesting thing is that the people who did the best in the county, the Democrats who did the best, were not necessarily people you would think. Like Jimmy Carter, a Southern Democrat, a Georgian, he didn't do that well in the county. Bill Clinton didn't do that well. Clinton did okay, but that was an election when Clinton was first elected in 1992. It was George H.W. Bush, the Republican nominee, Clinton, the Democratic nominee, and then H. Ross Perot was running as an independent. So Perot siphoned a lot of votes away from George H.W. Bush. Clinton didn't carry the county, but he did pretty well. But he's again a Southern Democrat governor. He was from Arkansas. The person who did the worst in that streak from 72 is, you might be thinking, oh, it would have been Hillary Clinton or something like that, but it was actually John Kerry. The other person who did, which kind of is, you know, Kerry's from Massachusetts. I mean, I know Kennedy won in 60, but yeah, Kerry's from Massachusetts. That might have something to do with it. But Al Gore, former vice president, senator from Tennessee, Democratic senator from Tennessee, he did not do well at all. He did a little bit better than Kerry, but did not do well at all. Hillary Clinton actually outpolled both of them. So just kind of some interesting facts. And then I don't know, I'm assuming, I didn't see the numbers for 2020, but I assume that Trump carried the county in 2020. So anyway, that's a little bit about Newton County. So as promised, it took me a while to get this data all put together, but as promised, got the spreadsheet here. Actually, it's not a spreadsheet. But, I want to talk about my first quarter, or more accurately, the truck's first quarter at Prime. So these are going to be numbers for the truck. This is not my income. It's the income of the company that I work for. And you know, I've alluded to this. I've talked about it too. You know, my wife and I have tax strategies that we're employing, and you know, we got some idea about where we want to go. But here's what I'm going to do, because I did a video back in May where I talked about my miles and my pay at GP Transco before I left. Now, the little footnote to this is that GP Transco has actually raised pay since I left. And the reason I'm bringing up GP Transco is because they're a very good paying company. They're one of the top 10 paying trucking companies for company drivers that are out there, that are of any size and any, you know, notoriety. And the reason it's interesting, to me at least, is because there are a lot of people that are, you know, anti-prime or anti-leasing, and one of their talking points always is, well, you could make that much as a company driver. And so I wanna just do a, you know, I worked for a very solid, high-paying, highly compensated company driver position, okay? And I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So some of this information, you know, you're going to have to like focus on, is it gross, is it net, how's that all working? But let's go through the numbers, and I'll do Prime and a GP Transco comparison. Okay, so I took the numbers for basically the first quarter, first 3 months of our time at Prime. It's actually a period of 14 weeks. I should get my VAP board out and do a side-by-side. Let me do that. Okay, so I'm back. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through stuff here, and as you can see, Prime is gonna be in blue, and GP Transco is gonna be in red. Hope you can see that. Okay, so at Prime, and keep in mind, this is, so at Prime, we're talking 13 weeks of data. At GP Transco, this was a 17-week of data. So at Prime, gross was, to the truck, $49,769. At GP Transco, the net was, and the reason you're not getting the gross is, or excuse me, the gross, I am going to give you the gross. the gross was $25,618. Okay, so here are the two gross numbers, right? Now, the prime is gross to the truck, right? The GP Transco was gross to me, okay, before any deductions. Now, the miles run were at GP Transco were 43,771, and at Prime the miles run are 29,121 miles. Okay, so there's the mileage numbers, right? Okay, so 29,000 at Prime in 13 weeks, 43,771 in 17 weeks at GP Transco. Okay, next category is what the truck grossed, or excuse me, truck net at Prime is 25,083. Now, I will say there's not going to be a truck net at GP Transco. The average, weekly average, is at Prime is $17.91 and 64 cents. At GP Transco, the average was $15.06 and 90 cents. Let's see. So, let me put that one down before I get out of my shirt. So, oh, I wrote the wrong color here. I got to redo this. Got to keep my color straight. Okay. So going back, so what I did is I put in the truck net. So this is what went into our company's, our LLC's checking account, $25,083. The weekly average for those 13 weeks at Prime, $17.91 and 64 cents. At GP Transco, the weekly average was $15.06.90 for the 17 weeks. So, what does that mean? Well, there are a couple other caveats. The numbers that you're seeing here reflect that I had a $1,667 claim against me, okay? So we ended up, that was deducted. We had to pay for that. And the other thing that's coming out of these numbers on the Prime side every week is tire fund performance bond. So we have cash that builds up in those funds, plus we also have residual cash. I've told you this before. We have residual cash from the tire fund from when we took over the lease, because remember, we're only on a 100-week lease, so less than 2 years. And yeah, so we so anyway, that's a couple of caveats on the Prime side. On the GP Transco side, if you had watched that other video, yes, it was 17 weeks. However, I sat for a week, okay? Now, discounting sitting for a week because I had an hours of service violation, I actually have been home more at Prime than I was at GP Transco. Just, I've been able to sleep in my own bed more nights. And there have been times where I said, oh, I was going to take like 2-3 days off, and I took 4 or 5. I have another break coming up that's going to be 5 days. So, you know, and I said in another video, if I only made the same amount of money, right? If I only made the same amount of money, then but I got more time off, then it would be worth it. Because really, it would be, because that would be an indicator that I was working less, right, but making at least as much money. So that's technically more money. Not in a sense of actual cash in the door, but just per hour, per mile, however you want to say it. So that's one thing. I have a little more latitude. I'm also getting a little bit better at picking loads, and a little bit better at like everything I'm doing. So plus, one of the other things that cost us in that first 13 weeks is my APU wasn't working for several weeks. So we spent more on fuel than we should have. So hopefully, because actually I've, over the past, say, 3 or 4 weeks, I've actually improved my fuel economy a little bit, tenth of a mile per gallon, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up. So while I would like those numbers to be better, and then once I start training, that'll kind of skew things too, obviously. But I would like those numbers to be better, but I suspect that if I looked at this as a solo driver in 6 months, that weekly average, net pay is going to be above $1,800 a week. So anyway, those are the numbers. If you like what you hear in here, please subscribe. If you hate it, please subscribe. Please like, comment, share. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds, because those are the numbers. I went through all our statements. But anyway, stay safe out there. We'll catch up with you fairly soon, and hopefully I'll get out of Mississippi before all this tropical storm moisture comes up here, though. I think we'll get out of here at some point tomorrow. Anyway, take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.